Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kika and today I'm gonna show you exactly step by step how to make this top that I'm wearing at the moment. It's called the Lola top and you can go ahead and follow the link in the description below and that will take you to Ravelry, and from there you can download the full pattern. But in this video every step is walked through so you can actually see what is coming up, and trust me, it's really fun, and it's actually really simple once you understand the construction of this top, because the construction of this top, it's a little bit extra special. For this top, you first start by doing the upper front and the upper back and forth, and then you combine them on a circular needle, and then you start going in the round, and then lastly you finish off by doing these shoulder straps. So you pick up stitches here and under the arm, and then you also cast on new stitches for the shoulder strap. So it's a really fun project and it doesn't get boring. Now the stitch pattern is called 1x2 broken rib stitch, and essentially what you do is you do a stock, like a normal rib, essentially 2x1 normal rib, but on every purl row from the right side, instead of having purl on every row, you have purl and then you have a knit stitch and a purl and a knit stitch, and that is what creates this broken rib stitch. I definitely recommend that you download the pattern if you're gonna make this top, because there you'll find all the specifications for the different sizes. But for the yarn, I've used Sunnes Garn Mandarin Petite and I've held it double. But if you want to substitute the yarn, maybe you have some in your stash, just try to make sure that the yardage or meters per 50 grams is usually what a ball is in, so that the yardage per the weight of the ball is kind of similar to the one that is in this pattern, so the Sunnes Garn Mandarin Petite, just to make sure that you will hit gauge, because otherwise if you maybe knit much looser or tighter than me, your garment will not be the same circumference, no, same measurement as the one that is calculated by the pattern. So I always recommend that you do a little swatch gauge before you get to it. Alright, so I have a little bit of a helper here who's gonna show me how to do the Lola top. Alright, we're just gonna begin by casting on stitches for the upper front, and you can either use the wrap-on cast-on method, sometimes it's also called the backward loop cast-on method, or you could also do a long tail cast-on method. Both really work for this pattern. Alright, so I've now cast on 35 stitches on my 3mm, so that's a US 2.5 needle. And now we're just gonna go back and forth and do our ribbing. So for the first one, we're just gonna knit this first stitch, and then I'm just gonna be repeating purl one, knit one until the end of the row, so both starting and finishing with a knit one. And the first row is usually always a little bit tight. All right, I'm just coming to the end here of the first row, so purl one, and then ending the first row with a knit one. So there I have my first row, and then just gonna turn my work around, and then I'm gonna be purling one, knitting one all the way across, and then ending with a purl one. And you're gonna be working these two rows until your ribbing measures around 3.5 centimeters or 1.5 inches. Alright, I have now completed the ribbing, so I've done 10 rows of knit one, purl one, and now we're ready to start working the broken rib stitch in 1x2 rib. So for this, you're gonna need your 4mm needle, and just still continuing in this main color, so that's for me beige. So now we're gonna start to work some increases. So first, just with the 4mm needle, first we're just gonna knit two, and next we're gonna make one left. So when you make one left, that means that you take your left needle, and this, you can see this strand of yarn here between the stitches. That's where we're going to create a new stitch. So I'm going to take my left needle and go in through the front, and then this strand I'm just going to knit through the back. And I've created a new stitch, so I've made one left. And then I'm just going to continue knitting all the way across until I come to the last two stitches of the row. All right, so now there's only 2 stitches left on the row, and now I'm going to make one right. So I'm gonna again take my left hand needle and locate this strand between the stitches. So that's this strand here. And then I'm gonna bring my left needle from the back and wrap the strand like this. And then I'm gonna knit now this from the front. So not from the back, but from the front, because otherwise there will be a hole. So I knit it so it gets twisted, and I made one right. And then I just knit these last 2 stitches of the row, and then you can just go ahead and put the 3mm needle aside. So now we've knit one row, so that's the right side, and then just gonna turn the work around, and now is where it gets exciting. All right, so now we're ready to work row 2, so on the wrong side. So here we're first gonna purl 3, then we're gonna repeat knit 1, purl 2 to the last 4 stitches, then we're gonna do a knit 1 and a purl 3. So let's do that. So first, purling 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And now our pattern repeat starts. So we're gonna knit 1 and purl 2 until the 4 last stitches. So knit 1 and purl 2 all across until we have 4 stitches left. Knit 1 and purl 2. All right, so now there are 4 stitches left. So that means we're gonna knit 1 and purl 3. So purl these last 3 stitches. Whoops. All right, and then we just turn the work around again. We're ready to work row 3, so we're gonna do another 2 increases. So we're gonna make one left here after 2 stitches in the beginning, and then we're gonna make one right before the last 2 stitches here at the end. So first, just knit 2, and then again we're gonna make one left, so that means that we take the left needle from the front and knit this stitch, the new stitch, through the back. So we made one left. And then, because we want to keep in the same rhythm of the broken rib stitch pattern, then we're just gonna knit across. So the broken rib stitch pattern, when you're working it like this back and forth, it's really, everything happens on the wrong side, because that's where you, every other row you purl some of the stitches, but on the right side you just knit every row. So in a sense it's pretty simple, but at the same time on the wrong side sometimes it can be a little confusing to see what's what. So that's why, especially here in the beginning, it's good to be a little bit mindful about that and just make sure that you know where you have your garter rib stitch rows, or the rows that create this broken rib stitch pattern. All right, and here again, when there's only 2 stitches left, we're gonna make one right. So that means that we're gonna go from this strand, take it from behind, from back, and then knit this stitch through the front like you would normally do, like this, and then you've made one right, and then you just knit these last 2 stitches. All right, ready to start working on row 4. So for row 4, we're first going to purl 4. And then we start again to knit 1 and purl 2 until the 5 last stitches. So first, purling 4. It's not super easy to tell, but you can see here where we worked the knit stitches here on the wrong side. So we always purl 2, and then we have this knit stitch. So here we're gonna knit, then we have purl 2 and knit. It's a little bit hard to see here in the beginning, but you can sort of see it. It's easier to see on the right side. All right, so I've arrived at the 5 last stitches, so then I'm gonna knit 1 and purl 4. Right, and then turn the work around again, and now we've done 4 rows in this main color in the pattern. So now we need to change to the CC color, so that's the contrasting color. And you just want to, don't break that one, you can just leave it hanging for 2 rows, and then we can just continue with that. So I'm just gonna grab my contrasting color here, and then just work the next row using that. So this is going to be row 5. All right, so row 5, we're gonna do an increase round again. So as we've done before,
just knit 2. Now with the new color, then make 1 left. So go in from the front and knit it through the back. Loop, and then just knit across in our new color. When you come to the end and you only have 2 stitches left, we're gonna make 1 right. So we're gonna go in from the back, take that strand and knit it from the front. So you've increased 1 stitch there, and then knit the last 2 stitches. All right, and that's row 5. So let's go to row 6. So we're again on the wrong side. And here we're gonna purl 2, and then we're gonna do the repeat, knit 1, purl 2 to the end. So really simple, just purl 2. And then we just repeat, knit 1, purl 2 until the end of the row. And now you can kind of start to see, it's a little easier to see here where these knit and purl or the garter stitch rows are, and then we just have the purl rows here. So it gets easier when you get further. All right, so there we worked now 2 rows in the contrasting color, and you can already start to see that the pattern is starting to form. And it looks really nice. Next, you're just gonna continue to repeat these rows. So first row 1 to 4 in main color, and then rows 5 to 6 in the contrasting color, and always doing these increases. And it depends a little on what size you're working. So I'm working the size small, so I'm going to repeating these rows for 2 more times, but it depends a little bit on what size you're working. All right, so here is what the front will look like when completed. So here we have the increases, and then you'll just continue for a while just knitting straight or just working in the broken rib stitch. So that is the upper front. After you've completed that, you will make the back, so the upper back. And I've already gone ahead and done that because that is just making a ribbing. Hey Kika. And just continuing in the broken rib stitch. Now, the next part, we're going to be joining the upper front and the upper back together for the body. For the Lola top, you have 2 different colors, but instead of cutting the yarn every time you switch colors, you can just let it hang there, and then you'll see that you'll have these little loops here. And that's totally fine because that won't be visible in the end result. Just make sure that they aren't too loose or aren't too tight. So obviously this stripe here, you can see there is a little bit of beige here, and then you have the other color here. So just let them be here, nice and neat on the side, so you don't have to cut, and then you'll have a lot of ends to weave in at the end. Joining upper, front, and back for the body. So we're gonna be joining on the right side, and from now on, every row or round is gonna be on the right side because we're gonna start to work on the round on the circular needle. So we'll just start here with the upper front. You could also start with the upper back, doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to be first knitting all the upper front stitches. All right, now I've knitted all the stitches on round 1 of my upper front. And actually the pattern says to first knit all the upper back stitches because you will have worked the back second in the pattern. But because I'm doing this tutorial, I did the back first and then the front, and that's why I'm knitting all the front stitches first. But it doesn't matter, you can do it in any order you want. So now we've knitted all of those, and now we need to cast on new stitches, and that's going to be under the arm. So since I'm doing size small, I need to cast on 13 stitches with the backward loop technique. So when you get to this point, you're just gonna be casting on with the backward loop technique the amount of stitches it says for your size. So I need 13. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, so there I've now cast on new stitches, which are going to be under the arm. And then with the same needle, I'm going to join in the back, or in the pattern, it would say to then knit the front stitches. So just take whatever front or back you have, and then just continue knitting. So we're still knitting round one, where we're joining these two pieces together. So we have them on the same circular needle. All right, now I've knitted all the stitches for the back as well. And then we're gonna again cast on new stitches for the other underarm. So I need to cast on again 13 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's our round one complete. And before we continue, it's a good idea to put a stitch marker here. So that is where the round will change. So we're done round one. Now let's continue to round two. And now it's gonna be a little different because we're gonna now work the pattern in the round instead of back and forth. So for round two, you're just gonna knit 2 and then purl 1 and go all the way across the entire round. Knit 2 and purl 1. Oh, and one thing to keep in mind and be mindful about, something that now happened to me. Here where I cast on new stitches, can you see that it's twisted? So my new stitches are actually now twisted. Can you see that? Is it sharp? Now you can see it, yeah. So they are twisted on the needle. So before joining in the round, make sure that they aren't twisted. If it's twisted like this, actually it's not a huge catastrophe, because you can just here at the beginning kind of twist it a little bit and make it okay. So I'm actually not gonna rip it up because it's not gonna be visible, especially since we make the shoulder straps, but just maybe a good idea to try to be mindful so the same thing doesn't happen to you as what just happened to me. Right, there are all the new stitches that I just cast on, worked those, and then just continue again. Knit 2, purl 1, all the way across. All right, so here I am almost at the end of my round. That's the last stitch. And now I know it's time to start working the third round because we have the little stitch marker there. So for round 3, it's just knitting all the stitches. And then for round 4, it's again knit 2, purl 1, and then we just repeat that. And of course then you need to change color, so there's always 4 rows in the main color and then 2 rows in the contrasting color. All right, I've now come this far, so I've worked my entire body and then I've done the ribbing here in my 3mm needles, or with my 3mm needles, and now has come time to bind off. And I want to use a stretchy bind off, so I thought I'd show you how to do that. So I've completed all the rows and I have my ribbing is approximately 6 centimeters wide. And now we're just gonna do a stretchy bind off, because sometimes just a regular bind off, it can be a little bit tight and you don't want it to be tight around the waist. So here I have my stitch markers, so I know that that is going to be my last round, and I've just gone ahead and knitted the first stitch, gonna purl the second stitch, and now for a regular bind off, you would just drag this stitch over the first one, but that can create a little bit of a tight bind off edge, I find. So for this, we're going to do a stretchy bind off. So instead, now you've had your 2 first stitches, I'm going to take this needle in through the front here, and then I'm going to knit them together and then let them off. And then I knit this stitch, so I have 2 stitches again, and then I take my left needle, go in through purlwise both the fronts, and then I essentially knit them together. And then I just continue this and in pattern, so I purl all the purls and knit all the knit stitches. And this will create a really stretchy bind off edge. I try to do it not too loose, because the edge itself is pretty loose, so I try to tighten them somewhat, so because I just don't want it to be too sloppy and floppy. All right, I'm down to my last stitch that I need to bind off, and I wanted to show you a little trick, because often when you bind off here at the end, there's sort of a little bit of a gap you can see here between where I've started and where I've ended. So what I like to do usually when I get to the end is I go in through here, the first stitch that I've bound off. So I take my needle, or actually maybe it would be this one, but I'm gonna go through this one. And I grab some yarn, so I just put my needle in through, grab some yarn, so I get that on the stitch, and then I just use this needle, and then just this stitch that I have left from the bind off on the needle, I just go ahead and pull that over. So now there isn't a gap, and now this I can just go ahead and cut. Leave enough of a tail so I can weave in the end, and then just pull the yarn through. And as you can see, there isn't a gap now, but still we have this one. So I'm just going to show you also a pretty nice way to fix that. I've just thread my yarn on a big tapestry needle, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in through. So I'm kind of sort of going to trace this bind off edge here. So I'm going to go in here with this thread and then back again into the stitch I came from, but then I'm going to take it onto the wrong side of the work. So here you can see completely invisible. So to weave in, I just usually try to go in a couple of different directions, take it diagonally, first that way, and then change direction. Go up here a little bit, try to go through so I almost break the yarn a little bit, just to get a little bit more friction so my end won't come undone. So, and that is the stretchy bind off edge done. So it's very, very stretchy and squishy, as you can see, so this won't be tightening around the waist.
Alright, now we come to the final stage of making the Lola top, which is making the shoulder straps. For this, you're going to need a crochet hook, so I'm using a 4mm crochet hook. This will maybe depend a little bit on your gauge, but I find that a 4mm crochet hook works pretty well, and it's only for the cast on part. So, but if you have a 3mm or 5mm, it probably works as well. But I just find that the 4mm works well for my gauge. But all right, let's start. So first we're gonna start with this side, so that's the right side. So with our 3mm needle, I'm going to start picking up stitches here in the middle of the underarm. So here is where we cast on new stitches for the underarm, so between the two pieces, and I'm gonna locate the middle, which is approximately here, and then I'm gonna grab some new yarn. So I have my shoulder strap color, and then I'm just going to start picking up stitches by going in through here, grabbing the yarn. Oh, that didn't work. Grabbing the yarn and pulling it through. So I picked up one stitch. So I'm gonna be picking up and knitting 40 stitches, which means that that's approximately equivalent of picking up 5 stitches for every 7 rows. So in other words, you're gonna pick up and knit 3 stitches from every row, then skip 1 row, then you're gonna pick up and knit 2 stitches from every row, and then skip 1, approximately. When you're picking up stitches here from the side, make sure that you're going in a line. So here now I've started to pick up here in this line of stitches, so just make sure that you try to keep to that same line of stitches or column, just because that just creates a nicer finish and it just looks better. So now I picked up my first 8 stitches, and here now I'm going to be first picking up 3 from every single row. That's 3. Then I'm gonna skip this one. Then I'm gonna again from 2 from every row, and then I'm gonna skip 1 again, and then I just repeat again. So 3 from every one. So I'm picking up 5 stitches for every 7 rows approximately, but I still need to make sure that I have enough. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I have picked up 38, so I have the final 2.
And try to really pick up the last stitch really here at the end, so you don't get this little floppy thing here, but actually really try to make sure that you're at the edge. All right, so now I picked up 40 stitches here for the front and starting from the middle of the underarm. And now we're gonna cast on stitches with the crochet cast on method. So let me show you that. You're going to need a crochet hook. So I'm using a 4mm crochet hook. And to do this, the first thing you want to do is actually to turn the work around, because you want the edge that we're gonna be creating to be on this side, so it's to the inside of the top, and it will make sense in just a while. So start by, this is now my working yarn, so this one I'm gonna actually bring to the back. And then you get this little loop here, so I have my working yarn here in the back, and then just have your crochet hook in the right hand, and then I'm gonna go in through here, gonna wrap yarn around my crochet hook and take it back onto the other side. And here you can see I've now cast on the first stitch. And then before we then start to cast on additional stitches, what you're gonna do is you're gonna bring once more, wrap yarn around the hook and take it through. All right, and now we are ready to begin. So all you need to do is the working yarn, take it through or between the knitting needle and crochet hook so it comes from the back, and then you just wrap yarn around and in through this loop here. So now we've cast on 2 stitches, you can see here, and then just repeat. So again, take the working yarn to the back, between the knitting needle and crochet hook, wrap yarn around, and take it through the loop with the hook. If you prefer, or this feels too complicated, you can of course also do just a backward loop cast on method. This is a little bit advanced, so if it feels too overwhelming, just skip this and go ahead and just do a regular cast on method instead. All right, I made now 25 stitches, so when you have 1 stitch less than you need, then just go ahead and this last stitch you can just transfer onto the knitting needle like that. And then we're just gonna continue making sure that these don't twist. Continue picking up stitches then here from the upper back part. So again, just grabbing the yarn, making sure that these don't get too twisted. And then just continue and pick up stitches here from the back, again making sure that you really start here at the top. Now I've picked up all my stitches, so now we have a shoulder strap, and now we're just gonna start to do a 1x1 rib across or in the round for this shoulder strap. So just start working your rib. So I'm just gonna place a marker here to mark where the round begins and ends, and just starting to work a knit 1, purl 1 rib for approximately 10 rounds just in the round, and then I'm just gonna bind off using a standard bind off method. So I don't need to use the stretchy bind off method because I actually don't want the straps to be too stretchy, because I don't want them to grow once I then wear this top. And here on the first row, you always have to zhoosh around these stitches a little bit because they might be a little bit tight. They haven't really fallen into place yet, but that always gets easier once you're past that first round. I've now worked 10 rows of knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and next step is to bind off using a standard bind off method. So now you can just go ahead and remove your stitch marker. We don't need that one anymore. And so just for the standard bind off method, you just first knit 2 in the pattern, and then just drag this first stitch over on top of that second stitch. And then again, knit, drag this first stitch over the second stitch, then I'm gonna purl, and then again drag the first stitch over the second stitch. This creates a really similar kind of edge that we have here on the crochet cast on edge here on the middle for the shoulder strap, which is also the reason why we do this crochet cast on method here, so it looks really nice and consistent and similar. And there it is, the first shoulder strap worked, so I've just bound off here now, and you can see that here there is a little bit of a gap. It's not too bad, but I think I'm gonna use this thread and then just with a tapestry needle try to close this gap so I don't have anything here, because this is going to be pretty visible on the front. So you can do that if you have this little gap here. It's like no matter how much you try to tighten it, it's a little bit difficult to get it completely tight. And here is then on the back side, and there it's a little bit easier to get that gap tight.
Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful and that it gave you the courage to maybe try out this pattern, because I feel often the thing that maybe holds us back from trying out a pattern or a new project and technique that we're not familiar with is just because you're afraid that you'll come to a place and you don't know what to do and you'll get frustrated and then it won't turn out nice. So I hope this tutorial and just seeing all the steps laid out will give you the courage and confidence to go for it. Alright, if you do decide to go for it, and I would love to see your work, then you can use the hashtag LolaTop and then hashtag #meetwithkika, because hashtag LolaTop, I feel like there are a bunch of Lola tops out there on Instagram, so then maybe use hashtag #meetwithkika so that I can come and find and see your beautiful creations. And as always, you can come and say hi. I am over at Kutovakika on Instagram. Alright, see you next time. Bye!